Synopsis of the Books of the Bible by John Nelson Darby. Genesis chapter 4. The separation of the families of God, of the enemies, Cain and Abel. By grace, but grace could work, the grace of God above the evil of man, and Abel's approach him by faith. Hereon follows the separation of the families of God and of the enemies of the world and of the faith. Abel comes as guilty and unable as he is to draw near to God, setting the death of another between himself and God, recognizing the judgment of sin. Has faith in expiation. Cain, laboring honestly, outwardly, when God has sent him to do so, extremely, and a worshipper of the true God, had not the conscience of sin, but brings as an offering the fruit which are signs of the curse, proof of the complete blindness of the heart and a hardening of the conscience of the sinful race, driven out from God. He supposed that all is well. Why should not God receive him? There is no sense of sin and ruin. Thus he brought in sin, not only against God, which Adam had fully wrought, but against one's neighbor, as it has been displayed in the case of Jesus, and Cain himself is the striking type of the state of the Jews. Sin and its present condition or consequences. These two chapters we have sin in all its form as a picture set before us in Adam and Cain's conduct, sin in the proper origin, characterized against God, and then more particular against Christ in figure. In the conduct of Cain, which it presents, consequently set forth as regards the earth, we may remark in both Adam and in Christ's case how the government of God on the earth is set in pronouncements as to the effects of sin, separation from God, being capable of and naturally formed for intercourse with them, is there but left rather for the moral waiting of the soul. The public revealed judgment is that the consequences on earth. It is clearly said, no doubt, he drove out the man with whom he had to have held intercourse, chapter 3. And from the face, says Cain, am I driven out, chapter 4. But what is developed is the earthly condition. Adam is shut out from the peaceful and unlaborious paradise to labor and till the ground. Cain is cursed from the earth in the very position and a figure and the vagabond, but he will be as happy there as he can, and frustrating God's judgment as far as he can, and settle himself in comfort in the earth, as his were God had made him a vagabond, see note, and that the world. Here is the first picture in its true character. Note, Nod is vagabond. God has made him Nod, and he settles himself, called the land after his own name, or at least his son's name, as an inheritance and ambiguous his city and arts and his delight of music. A remarkable picture. End of note. Man's state and the sin apart from God. Remark also the two solemn questions of God. Where art thou? Man's own state apart from God, intercourse with him lost, and what hadst thou done? Sin committed in that state, of which the consummation of full witness is the rejection and death of the Lord. Lamech. In the history of Lamech, we have, on man's part, self-will and lust. He had 2 wives, and a vengeance of self-defeat. But I apprehend the imitation and God's judgment that as Cain was the preserver thought punish Jews, his posterity, and the end, before the heir was raised up and man called on Jehovah in the earth, would be sevenfold, watching over of God. Lamech acknowledges he had slain to his hurt, but shall be avenged. The summary of chapters 2, 3, and 4 set the heir of God's counsel. In the second chapter, there we have men in the order of created blessings, the state in which he is. In the third, man's fall from God, by which his intercourse with God on this ground is foreclosed. In the fourth, his wickedness and connection with grace in the evil state resulting from his fall. What the world thereupon became, man being driven out from the presence of him who accepted the sacrifice in grace in order its comfort and pleasure without God, yet bore with and a remnant preserved, and the heirs of God counsel. Seth sets up, and man calls on the name of God in relationship with him, that is, on Jehovah. Driven from the presence of God, Cain seeks, in the importance of his family, in the arts and the enjoyment of life, temporary consolation, and tries to render the world, which God had set him forth as a vagabond, and settles abode, and the agreeable as a possible, far from God. Sin had here the character of forgetfulness of all that had passed in the history of man, of hating against grace and against him who was the object and the vessel of it, of pride and indifference, and then despair, which seeks comfort in worldliness. We have also the man of grace, Abel, type of Christ, and of them that are his, rejected and left without heritage here below. Man is empty judged and abandoned to himself, and another set, the object of the counsel of God, who becomes heir of the world on the part of God. We must remember, however, that there are only figures of these things, and that in the antitype, the man who is heir of all is the same as he who had been put to death.